perché London Calling e perché Clash. Rolling Stone nelle classifiche, si fanno le classifiche, si mettono in fila le cose, interpellando centinaia di giornalisti, si è detto che è l'8º album più importante della storia della musica. E questa è una cosa, a noi interessa poco, a noi interessa London Calling perché è un album che porta avanti le cose, prende dei concetti, prende i concetti del punk, prende un'attitudine, la contamina con tutto quello che arriva dalla cultura giamaicana, dalla cultura americana, dall'osservazione del sociale, dall'impegno, lo porta avanti ma rimanendo coerenti. Lo porta avanti usando la CBS, che è una major, ma con la consapevolezza che si può portare avanti un messaggio coerente utilizzando i mezzi di comunicazione di massa. Noi adesso abbiamo dei mezzi di comunicazione di massa che sono i social network e quant'altro. Nel 1979 un mezzo di comunicazione di massa era firmare con una major. E andare avanti significa non fossilizzarsi, non incatramarsi nelle situazioni, ma cercando il più possibile di rimanere coerenti. E abbiamo qua Mr. Letts che...
Ciao.
Ciao.
What the fuck did you just say?
Okay, I say my language.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I need to know what you say.
I want my translation on this beautiful.
Either, I don't care. What did he say?
Okay.
What did he say?
No.
That London Calling like takes from society, takes from like the world around, and it takes it and it moves it forward.
Yeah.
But being coherent, like they signed with CBS. It was like something like mass media operation, like connected to now, no? It was like broadcasting, but even though they kept coherence. So this is basically what he said.
And kept the punky attitude.
And they took the attitude and they moved forward.
Yeah, you know what I liked about London Calling is that the Clash redefined what punk rock could be. You know, because by 78, all of a sudden everybody thought it was just about fast and furious guitars. But when the Clash did London Calling, it embraced all musical genres, and that's what makes the record great.
Makes sense.
So do they need to know?
Okay.
Hey, how many people understand English in here?
Yeah. Okay, so you don't need a translation.
We try in English?
Yeah. We try in English because
yeah, because otherwise it's fucked up, man. It gets lost in translation. So we try. Work with me. If I say something you don't understand, ask me. I'm easy like that. Yeah. Okay, go on.
Okay. Let's start from the beginning. Yeah. London Calling. There's a song called Guns of Brixton. You're from Brixton, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. What's about living in living in Brixton and grow up in Brixton in the late 70s on?
It's interesting. Growing up in the mid to late 70s in Brixton, it was a very multicultural area, and we all got along. We were all friends, and things only became strange.
White and black people.
White, black, African, Irish, Greek, you know, all different tribes, and we kind of worked things out. And it only got complicated when the politicians got involved.
Okay, as usual.
You understand?
Yeah.
But it was a great example of the multicultural way that London was heading.
Okay. So a big exchange between culture, the white culture or black culture, or most to the black culture to the white culture.
That's interesting. I guess in England there is a tradition of young white working class kids getting a rebellious fix from black music.
Yeah.
Before the 70s, the mods were being inspired by R&B and ska and reggae and things like that. Heck, before that, rock and roll was, you know, looking to black America. R&B and boogie woogie. The difference in the late 70s was this. By this time, my parents' generation had come to England.
Yeah.
They call them the Windrush generation. And people like Joe Strummer...
Was Windrush? Okay,
So
sorry.
people like Joe Strummer, Paul Simonon and Mick Jones, they grew up with black people. They weren't being inspired by a strange music from distant lands. They could hear this in the streets of Brixton. So the effect on their music was a lot more obvious. You could hear reggae in their bass lines. You could hear Joe Strummer referencing reggae culture. And for me, it was very empowering because I could see my culture being embraced by my white friends. Do you understand?
Absolutely.
Everybody understand?
Yes.
So the Clash grew up with black people. It wasn't some exotic fascination with distant music. They knew their shit, is what I'm saying.
Okay, that's the music. That's the music, but in everyday life, there's the same exchange, the same respect, and the same multicultural exchange in the real life. That's the music in real life. If
Yeah,
you-
I mean, I think the reason...
also with your parents' generation.
Yeah, again, when my parents came to England in the 50s, they were asked to come to England to help rebuild the country after the Second World War. And all the old white people were terrified. Oh my God, they're going to steal our homes, they're going to steal our jobs, they're going to steal our women. And the politicians, they played on this. You know, they blamed the problems of the country on these new immigrants. This is a very common tactic, no?
Yeah.
Okay. But what's interesting is...
Actual too.
Yeah, what's interesting is while the politicians played on the fears of the old white people, it was the culture of my parents that captured the imagination of the young white kids. They were fascinated by the rhythms. They were fascinated by the style and the attitude. So it's interesting that it's a testament to the power of culture to bring people together.
And the lyrics of the track too, because the lyrics, they speak about reality, about problems, about unease and stuff like this.
I mean, reggae, one of the reasons that people like reggae is one, obviously it's got a fucking great groove and the bass lines. But for the most part, the brothers are singing about things that people can identify with. You know, how are we going to live? How are we going to do it together? Money in my pocket, chant down Babylon. These ideas...
Older youth boy legacy and stuff.
All these things translated perfectly to the streets of London in the 1970s. That's why the Clash did Police and Thieves, because they could identify with it.
Police and Thieves, you know what Police and Thieves?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is Italy, man. Come on. They know. All right, we're not that drunk yet. In a moment.
And so, do you met the Clash at the Roxy or before?
I saw the Clash in 1976. I was in a reggae party in Ladbroke Grove. All black people.
What's Ladbroke Grove? West End of London.
Portobello Road, West
Okay.
London, where the Clash grew up. And a room full of black people, and I see two white faces in the corner. And they got their urban chic clothes and spiky hair. And I'm like, fuck, these dudes are really brave. And it was Joe and Paul.
Okay.
But I didn't know who they were then. And then a few weeks later, they came in. I used to run a shop on the Kings Road, Chelsea, called Acme Attraction. Hey, by the way, I don't normally speak like this. I'm speaking slow so you understand. I sound like a fucking robot. Anyway, a few weeks later, they came into my shop, Acme Attractions, and it's interesting because all I ever played in the shop was reggae, and they heard the bass, and they came down, and we became friends through a mutual love of Jamaican music. That's how we became friends.
That's great.
And I've got to tell everybody in this room this. It's really important. Everybody says Donletts, punky reggae party, he started. Not totally true. People like Strummer, people like Paul Simonon, even John Lydon, he was called Johnny Rotten back then. These were some of the white kids that had already grown up with Jamaican music. So they knew about reggae. the people that I turned on to black music and reggae were the people that didn't live next door to black people. And in the mid-70s, that was a lot of white people. You know, all the people in the suburbs. They're the ones that I hip to reggae. Okay. So it's not all my fault.
And in the same road, King's Road, there's another shop. There was the Marco McLaren and Vivian Westwood shop. Mm-hmm. There's some, yeah. There's the Clash and the other punky guys. They go to the Acme or to the Vivian Westwood Marco McLaren shop, or they go both and move forward and back. There's rivalry between your shop and...
Absolutely, there's big rivalry.
Okay.
Even though before I opened the shop, I was very good friends with Malcolm and Vivian. Malcolm McLaren was very important to me. I met him 3 years before punk rock exploded. And it was Malcolm McLaren that explained to me that the counterculture that I was so fascinated with didn't happen in isolation. The counterculture, this is important, you understand this, it has a lineage, it has a heritage, and it was Malcolm that helped me join the dots and understand that if I was brave enough and if I had a good idea, I could be part of this thing instead of just being a fan. And then 3 years later, punk rock happens with a DIY thing. And when my friends like the Clash are picking up guitars, I picked up a Super 8 camera and I reinvented myself as Donletts, the filmmaker. But it was Malcolm that put the seed of the idea in my head.
And there's another figure similar to Marco McLaren that was Bernie Rhodes, that was the man behind the Clash, as as Marco McLaren was the man behind the Sex Pistols. What's the difference between Bernie Rhodes and Marco McLaren? There's complementary, similar, different approach, or something like this. Because
Malcolm and Bernie were like the punk intelligentsia, because they were like 10 years older than the rest of us. Okay. You know, they were part of the whole 1968 explosion. And good that you mentioned this, because they could see the continuity of this new counterculture.
From mods,
yes, they could.
Skinheads and
they could exactly.
The real skinheads.
Yeah, when we say skinheads, we're talking about the fashion version, not the fascist version. Fucking dickheads that don't even understand it all started with black music. Fucking dickheads. What were we saying? So yeah,
Bernie Rhodes.
Bernie Rhodes. Yeah, he was important. He made the Clash think about what they were doing. He made the Clash put everything in a kind of social and political, frame. You know, he was the one that told them to sing about what you know, what you understand. You know, because it was music for the people, by the people, and of the people. You know, that's what punk rock was about. You know, they were creating a soundtrack that was relevant to their situation, and every generation needs its own soundtrack.
So, write about riots. Nothing is right. White riots, it's right, that starts from this photo. This guy here is Mr. Rance.
I've seen it, yeah.
It's a very famous photo.
That's me. This me at the riots in Notting Hill, 1976 riots. But this picture is a lie. I show you why. What the picture doesn't show you is behind me, thousands of black people, bricks and bottles, and they're about to throw the bricks and bottles at the police. So I look, I was like, oh fuck. I look at the police and I'm thinking, I'm gonna get out of the way. And somebody took the picture I never knew. No, but Donletts is not stupid. I wasn't gonna walk up to those police. Come on.
We can pick a tune of this.
Pick a tune from here, Pressure Drop.
Pressure Drop.
Because pressure's dropped again, man, all over the place.
Just to contextualize a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
The reggae impact on my white brothers.
Questions?
All right, musical break with the Clash. An example of the Clash's embrace of Jamaican music, or maybe not.
Maybe they don't.
Fuck it. Ask me another question.
Okay.
Ask me another question. I told you this shit wouldn't work.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ask me a question, man.
There's another aspect. The days of the Roxy, there was the club when you DJs.
Yeah. It was the first punk rock club in England.
Okay. Only lasts
100 days.
100 days. Why? And
Why?
Why? And if you think this 100 days was the real punky period, and after these 100 days the punk become another thing?
It's a very interesting observation because, when I got the job at the Roxy, it was so early in the punk rock movement, there were no English punk records to play. So I played what I liked. I played the dub and the reggae. And lucky for me, the punks liked it too. What was your question? What was the question?
No, if the
Why did
why did it end? We did that so.
Okay, 100 days. So,
Such a short period.
yeah, although for me it felt like 1 year. Basically, we're talking about the club I used to DJ in, the Roxy, which it was me and my Rasta friends. We ran this club with another white guy that owned it. And it closed down after 100 days because it was doing very good business. And the landlord thought, I can do this. I don't need these people. And he kicked us out.
Okay.
He kicked us out. But it was a very special 100 days because that was the core of punk rock. Because after that, it became very tabloid. It became about spitting. It became about mohawks and safety pins because the media had got involved. You understand?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the first wave of punk rock people, they moved away from the mohawks and the safety pins and the leather jackets and the fast and furious guitars. And really, that's when the whole post-punk thing started. It's because people didn't want to be put into that bag of nihilistic negativity. Punk was never about that. Punk was about empowerment, freedom, and individuality. And it was also about embracing all the world had to offer. And that's why the album London Calling is so good. Because the guys are showing you what they're into.
So because there's another front of the punk movement as the Crash. They are very orthodox and say, fuck you Clash, you signed for the CBS.
Yeah.
They say, also Mark Berry from Sniffing Glue magazine says, punk is dead when Clash signed to CBS.
Yeah.
How do you think about it?
Stupid. No, listen, this is what happens.
No, why?
I'm going to tell you why. Because, if the Clash hadn't signed to CBS, maybe they would be big in their area, but Joe wanted to reach people. He wanted to communicate to people, as many people as possible. And he didn't want to take your money. He believed in music as a tool for social change. He really believed this, Joe. Joe Strummer, he came from the tradition of Woody Guthrie, Dylan, Lennon, Gil Scott-Heron, Chuck D. That's how Joe saw music. It was supposed to change people and ideally the world. He was very idealistic.
You mentioned Woody Guthrie and Bob Dylan and other people. But there are whole USA people. Because
Lennon, we had Lennon. No, Lennon was kind of, come on, give him come on, don't be an asshole.
But no, because
he might have turned into a dick, but he had his moments. Come on, working class hero.
I want to make a provocation that there's no British Bob Dylan, so maybe just Strummer.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I said he's in that tradition.
Okay.
Absolutely right.
So they took his.
It's that understanding that music can change people's life. They're not just trying to be celebrities and make money. They actually see it as part of they use it as a tool for social change. Not just about escapism and parties. You can't spend your life on the dance floor. Eventually the music's going to stop and you have to face reality. And guess what? There's some great tunes for that as well. The Clash are a great example.
And it's for this that another interesting fact about the Clash, the punk movement is about broken up. start from the beginning and forget about the past.
Cultural year zero.
Absolutely. But the Clash, just from the beginning, they start to dig into the past. Because in the first album there was covers, there was Police and Thief, and this is, I think, I ask you, is peculiar to the Clash to dig into the past, or there's other bands from the movement that goes in that direction?
Listen, you know, when the whole punk thing started in England, it's like that blind energy of youth where everything is either black or white and everyone just going fuck you. The thing about English punk rock is some people just stayed with fuck you, but the Clash were like, okay, fuck you, but now what? And then they were constantly re-examining what they were doing. They were constantly, I mean, that's how London Calling happened. You know, before London Calling, they made, what was it? Give 'Em Enough Rope. Didn't do well on the charts, got bad reviews. And when they made London Calling, they were really up against it. They had a lot to prove. You understand? And they decided that they were going to redefine what punk rock was. They were no longer going to listen to the fans. They were no longer going to listen to the media. They were going to decide what the Clash were about. And once Joe freed himself of people saying, oh, you've sold out, you know, and all this shit, because the Clash were never their toy to play with in the begin with. Joe says this in West Way to the World. You understand? And there was like a punk police thing happening where people were saying, this is punk rock, this isn't punk rock. And Joe was too intelligent for that. John Lydon was too intelligent for that. The Slits, too intelligent for that. And I personally think the post-punk scene was more musically interesting than the punk scene. But you couldn't have one without the other. You needed you needed that first thing of saying, all right, fuck all that old stuff. But then you had to be brave enough to move forward. Some people just
it's more about to erase and restart.
You gotta bring something to the mix. You can't just keep running around saying fuck you. You gotta offer a solution.
You need to do something. Yeah. Absolutely.
Or
like the Spencer song, do something.
Yeah, exactly. Or White Riot, you know, which was actually about getting involved. It wasn't a racist song, you know.
It's white.
Oh, hold on a second. Oh, am I talking too fast? You still understanding what? It's all good?
Yes.
Because I feel like me and him are having a conversation. And hey, if you want to interrupt and get involved, feel free. Yeah?
Thanks.
No, I want to involve Antonio. There's a good friend of ours.
Okay.
Because my English is so bad.
Mine is shit too.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
I la in Italian and she's Donletts. Volevo chiedergli se era, quando ha iniziato a fare il DJ come punk nella scena punk, era consapevole di quanto avrebbe cambiato il punk le cose nel mondo a livello sociale, a livello musicale, e allo stesso modo quanto i Clash, quando hanno fatto London Calling sandinista, erano consapevoli di come la loro scelta di mixare tutte queste musiche avrebbe cambiato veramente la musica.
How comes Italian questions are so fucking long?
Possiamo dividerla in due.
Sorry, what's the question?
Possiamo dividerla in due.
Fucking very long.
Basically, they have two.
Yeah, two questions. Still long. Go on.
The first is, okay, the first is when you started DJing, did you realize how this would change? I mean,
No.
If you're conscious,
Okay.
you're conscious that
Okay, so you know what he asked me. No, the whole punky reggae thing was an accident. You know, I got the job to DJ, and I'd never DJ'd in my life. And it was a punk rock club, but there were no punk records to play. So I played what I liked. But you know what's funny is, even though it seems like a strange thing that I was playing reggae to punk rock kids, as I said earlier, there was an established tradition of white working class kids listening to Jamaican music. For example, and I keep saying this, the first skinhead movement, we're talking about the fashion version, they were listening to the music of Trojan Records. The Mods were listening to Ska and Blue Beat and Prince Buster. So it wasn't as weird as people think that punk rockers were listening to Jamaican music. It already had a tradition. Second question was?
When the Clash released some records, above all Sandinista. Do you think there were
both London Calling and Sandinista before?
do you think they were aware of the change that actually they
Oh yeah, no, listen, by the time they'd done London Calling, you know, Joe didn't do anything by halves. He was constantly thinking about what he was doing, how it was being represented by the band and the media, and how the fans were, you know, reacting to it. And throughout his whole life, he was very hard on himself. He would never like relax and just do something. He really valued the art that he put out. And I guess he didn't want to pollute the planet. Yeah. Miss Joe Strummer, man. Damn.
I have a question for you.
All right, we have a question. Go on. Quick. Go on.
In Italy, we have now a political situation very strange because we have a political called Matteo Salvini. It is like Enoch Powell. Do you remember Enoch Powell? And you talk about the Windrush generation. What do you think about it?
What do I think about what? Racists?
Enoch Powell and Salvini.
They're all. Listen, man. It's not just in Italy. It's a global problem now. This nationalism, and you know, Trump started it, and it's spreading like a disease around the world. But I don't want to talk about this shit. It's too depressing. Yeah. Really too depressing. You know, all I know is it's all of us or none of us. You know.
There's already Eric Clapton that supports Enoch Powell, but it's the past.
Yeah.
Move forward.
Yeah. I'm still naive enough to think that music can change things. I'm of that generation where music did change things. I think in the 21st century, maybe it's lost some of that power. I don't know, because young people have many different ways to express themselves. And most of the shit.
Talking about London
Social
Calling.
media, man. What the hell?
Yeah.
If social media existed in the late 70s, punk rock would never happen.
There's a question that I want to ask you just before. There's a man behind London Calling. His name is Guy Stevens.
Yeah.
It was the producer of London Calling, and there's a kind of mythological figure, crazy, doing stuff. And you were in the Wessex Studios in the rehearsals. Can you tell me something about Guy Stevens? And if
you know what's funny, let me tell you something. I was in the Wessex Studios with Guy, but I don't remember anything in there.
Why?
And you know, and I used to tell people I was never there when they were recording.
Okay.
And then I saw some Penny Smith pictures. And there's me with Guy Stevens like this. There's me in the studio sitting there and Joe's doing a vocal. I don't remember. I don't know. Hey, it was 40 years ago. I've done a lot of shit and smoked a lot of dope. Oops. Sorry, Fred Perry. You can chop that out. No, but
we are not in a church.
Yeah,
not
but,
a problem.
yeah, shit. I don't remember. But I mean...
He's not that crazy. He's smashing chairs and
listen,
stuff.
Guy Stevens, that stuff is not myth. If you look at there's an early edition of London Calling with a short film called The Last Testament, and it's about the making of London Calling. And in there you will see footage of this producer. And while the guys
it's
are
a movie by Donletts.
Yeah. And while the guys are playing, he's smashing chairs on the floor. He's swinging ladders around. This guy was out there, but he was trying just to get a reaction out of the band.
Just to
sometimes it works.
Push energy,
exactly. And make them be in the moment, you know. But he was fucking crazy. No, really.
Sometimes it's really good to being crazy, because if you don't have another question is, the punk movement born from an ease there's
a need?
Unease. There's unease, the struggle and stuff like this. Right now, in 2019, is
same thing. No punk rock. I know what you're saying.
Okay, because
I think what he's saying is that punk rock was formed in a time of social, economic, and political crisis. And it's funny, fast forward 40 years, here we are again, social, economic, and political crisis. Where is the punk rock today? Now, this is what we really should be talking about, because this thing where we keep looking backwards is not healthy. What we need to do is take lessons from the past and drag this shit forward. It's really important, you know. Now that's what I'd like to ask. I'd like to ask you, where is punk rock today? And I'm not talking about imitations of what happened back then. I'm talking about people that understand the spirit and the attitude, and it can inform whatever kind of music they do. Understand this, punk rock. The reason we still talk about punk rock 40 years later is that if it was just about guitars, we wouldn't be talking about it, right? Punk rock was a complete subculture. Many people went to those shows, and some started bands, but some became photographers, some became poets, some became graphic artists, journalists, fashion designers, filmmakers. Do you understand what I'm saying? It was a complete subculture, and there's no movement that's happened since then that's been that complete. And that is a problem for me. I don't want to be here talking about something that happened 40 years ago. I'd much rather be talking about what the fuck's going on now. Because while we're looking backwards, there's a lot of crazy shit going on, man. And you really need to get that punk rock spirit and that punk rock attitude to do something about it. And you don't have to put that into being a band. Just like the fact that punk rock was a complete subculture, you can take that spirit, that attitude, and it can inform whatever you do. You could be a punk rock teacher. You could be a punk rock doctor. You could be a punk rock politician. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you understand that spirit and the vibe. And I'd argue that maybe we don't need any more fucking bands. Stage is full up, but we could sure do with some more punk rock politicians, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we can, like I say, we got to take examples from the past, but see how we can do something with it positive right now, because the world is a mess. I don't live in Italy, but I hear there's a really dark side. In fact, I know there's a dark side. I don't know, you have a tradition of a dark side, though. I don't know what.
Yeah, but if you have a dark side, you use the dark side for step up this dark side.
Sometimes
you need some energy to.
Well, like I say, sometimes you need to get really ill before you realize you need the medicine. And right now, we need some fucking medicine for all this darkness.
Maybe it's music, maybe there are places like this.
And I'd suggest that it takes more than just ticking like or whatever they do on social media. It needs more than that. You need to be proactive. You need to go out and get involved.
An interesting thing is, punk rock movement was barely a small amount of people.
It's me. Sorry.
No problem.
Go on.
It was a small group of people that connect in Roxy in places like this. Right now I think about a lot of time that with social medias, and if I make a fart right now, they can hear it in UK immediately. And I think, what do you think about keep this attitude and this energy between people in the world today, with this kind of situation that with the digital era that.
Listen,
I think
here's the thing.
It will be possible that the punk movement can grow up right now.
No, listen, let's be clear about this. The problem isn't technology. Technology is great. What's going on in Hong Kong right now? People are using technology to speak to one another and let the rest of the world know what's going on. So technology is great, people are shit. That's the problem. It's how we use it. And in fact, social media, in some cases, can be very punk rock. Things like the Arab Spring.
Yeah.
How do you think that was organized? How do you think we knew about it outside? Through Facebook and Twitter. So in some places in the world, social media is a vital lifeline to exchange ideas and be politically active. In the West, people are showing you pictures of their ugly kids and what they ate last night.
Kittens and stuff.
So the problem isn't technology. Technology is great, like I said. Technology is great, people are shit. But it definitely can be proactive, and it can be part of that punk spirit and that attitude. I've seen examples of it all the time. Just not in England and America.
But you don't think you can lose the stomach thing of this?
I know what you're saying. Yeah. No, listen.
The bloody stuff.
It's interesting.
The physical.
A lot of the things that happened in the last half of the 20th century, all the subcultures that England is so famous for, rude boys, skinheads, mods, punks, right? They all happened because of how little we had, not how much we had.
That's my question.
And then we had to go and find people that were into what we were into, and that's how these subcultures started. Now, with the digital age, you can click on a button and you can have your own personal subculture at home. But you need to bring the humanity back. We need to do this. Look each other in the eyes. Meet. Collective experience is very important. I'm into anything that brings people together in a space like this for a collective and fucking synchronized experience. And the digital age has broken that. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. You know, back in the day, in like, let's say, I don't know, the 70s, if, you know, somebody made a radical statement, the next day everybody knew, right? And that statement would turn into an energy, and then people would act on that. Now in the digital age, if somebody said something radical, somebody will hear it now, somebody will download it and hear it 2 weeks later, and somebody will maybe like rewind, you know what I mean? So, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Fuck it up. The information has been fragmented and diluted, and it's weakened the message.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Because there's too many different things happening all over the place. There's no focus. And this might not make sense to everybody, but it definitely makes sense to me. Because we were more creative when we had less.
Absolutely.
Is that it? Done? Good. Oh, shit.
Wait, a short question this time.
No, I'm joking. I was joking.
No, il punk e poi lo ska sono stati i movimenti che hanno dato per la prima volta molto spazio alle donne. Volevo sapere se me lo confermo o meno.
Okay. In his opinion, punk rock and ska gave, for the first time, much space to women.
Say it again.
Okay.
Punk rock and ska.
Punk rock and ska gave to women for the first time a little bit more power. What do you think about that?
I'd say punk rock definitely empowered women. I mean, people.
It's me.
It's you.
Yeah, it's me. Sorry.
Obviously, the Slits, Polystyrene, Susie and the Banshees, Gay Advert. I was going to say empowered women up and down the country, but they empowered women all around the world. Ska? I don't know. I couldn't argue that, because the truth of the matter is, reggae has been misogynist and very, you know, it's a man thing. It's changed over the years, but predominantly, you know, everybody in reggae is like Jimmy Cliff and Harder They Come. So it's you know, what I'm saying is the reggae scene was very male dominated up until quite recently. You know, other than Judy Moat, Marcia Griffith, and a few others. There's a few others, but not many. I would say that no, you couldn't argue that ska empowered women. But punk rock, absolutely. Absolutely.
I want to talk about...
Se me la traduci, you want to use the toilet?
Vai.
Qual è, ritornando ai giorni delle registrazioni di London Calling, il ruolo che secondo te ha avuto un batterista straordinario come Topper Idon per consentire ai Clash di sperimentare tutti i generi che hanno sperimentato in London Calling?
What did he say?
Okay,
What was the role for you? Is this fine?
the role of the drummer.
Topper.
The role of Topper.
The role of Topper.
To help the Clash to push up music.
London Calling would not have been possible without Topper. If they didn't have Topper as a drummer, London Calling, not fucking possible. And, well, it's obvious, because once they lost Topper, the Clash went, you know, that was their driving machine. He was professionally the most prolific musician. Mick was good too, but Topper, you know, people don't understand, it wasn't just drums. You know, tracks like Rocking the Casbah.
Yeah.
Topper basically wrote all the music to that. You know, one day he was in the studio, the band wasn't there, and he started to lay down a few things. End of it, he's got the track for Rocking the Casbah. You know, Joe wrote the lyrics. But yeah, Topper was tremendously musically talented. And yeah, if they hadn't have found him, I don't know what would have happened to the Clash.
It's an interesting thing that you start as a DJ, with the Acme Traction shop, and in 1985, I think, you start BAD, Big Audio Dynamite.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Why did you decide to expose yourself as a musician?
Well, good you said that, because first off, I can't play anything. I'm not a musician. No, seriously, I can't play shit. When I was live on stage, I had coloured stickers on my keyboard to show me what to do. You know, we're talking punk rock here.
Also the Ramones have this stuff on the bass.
But because I realised that you can't just stand on stage with dark glasses and look good, I realised that I had to contribute something, so I wrote lyrics with Mick. I wrote 50% of the lyrics with BAD. And before I did that, I don't know do you know Big Audio Dynamite?
Yeah!
Okay, one of the things we're famous for is using samples and dialogue from movies. And that was because of me, because I couldn't play anything. So I'm watching TV and I say, oh, let's steal some of this, let's steal some of that. But you don't get paid for stealing people's shit. So I quickly threw myself, with Mick's help, into writing lyrics. The first lyric I ever wrote was E = MC squared. That was the first thing I ever wrote. But I'm very proud of Big Audio Dynamite because, again, it's a great example of the multicultural mix of London. And our sound was a multicultural mix from around the world because we had Jamaican bass lines, New York hip-hop beats, mixed rock and roll guitar, British style, and then me doing the whole sample and dialogue thing. So I think it was a very unique sound. I'm really proud of Big Audio Dynamite, actually. Very proud. I've got gold disc and I can't play anything. Punk rock, man, it works.
I mean, maybe it's working right now.
If you want to, but it's better we talking, I'm telling you. Otherwise, we have to stand there and listen to the fucking track. Talking is better, right?
Yeah.
You can play the tracks when you go home.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, talking about
Yeah.
it works right now, maybe.
Yeah.
I missed my track, but you also make a lot of music video for the Clash.
Oh, music.
The most famous, absolutely, is London Calling. Can you tell us something about the making of
London
the
Calling?
video of London Calling? Because it's
London Calling.
I know it's a funny situation.
London Calling was the second video I made in my life. I've made about 400 music videos. And the first video I made was for Public Image. Simple, in a studio, just performance. The second video, I think, okay, I got a little bit of money, let's try and do something a bit more adventurous. So I decided to put the band on a pier by the river. And this was like 12 o'clock in the day. And in my mind, I saw them playing in the daytime by the river. But I wanted to put some cameras on a boat. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, I can't swim. And I didn't know that the Thames, the River Thames, it has a tide, flows. I didn't think about this. And also the tide, it goes up and down about 15 feet. Anyway, by the time I'd worked out all the technical problems, it was night time, it was pissing down with rain, and I had to roll the cameras. Turned out to be the best luck I ever had, because we never had the money to afford rain and these dramatic effects. So London Calling was a classic example of punk rock in that I turned what was a problem into an asset. And that's totally punk rock. Turning problems into assets. That's one of the punk rock rules. But not my favorite Clash video. My favorite, I think, is Rockin' the Casbah.
Yeah.
I love that shit.
The Armadillo one.
Yeah, it was fun to make as well.
It's your idea, the one about the armadillo.
Yeah, I don't know where we were in Texas.
Why the armadillo?
Why I saw an armadillo, I said, I like this thing. Let's put a fucking armadillo in the video. You can do that with videos. No, you know, it's shit. I'm going to tell you, it's an Alfred Hitchcock thing, MacGyver. Like he'll put this weird thing in, and people are like, "What the fuck?" And it's just so that people go, "What the fuck?" I mean, if nothing else, the armadillo is actually the the national animal of Texas.
Yep.
But for me, it was just a funny thing. The interesting thing was the interaction between the Arab and the Jew.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny because I thought the record company would never buy it. So I thought if I put Arab, Jew, and an armadillo, it makes it less political.
It's a funny thing when the Jew put gasoline into the Arab
the
car.
one making him pay the money. Yeah,
There's another video that I absolutely like. There's a BAD video is a medicine show. When there's Joe Strummer and Paul Simon are dressed as a cop. There's
yeah.
tell about it.
I
It's more funny.
don't know if you know what he's talking about. He's talking about our second video, Medicine Show. And what's interesting about the video is before that, the Clash had broken up, and Mick Jones was having what do you call it? Financial arguments with Joe and Paul. So they were talking to each other through lawyers. So they'd become distant. We decided to kind of try and get everybody to be friends on the set of Medicine Show. So we asked Joe and Paul to be on the set, and basically they kind of became friends again. Or, you know.
Because it's funny because they act as a cop.
Yeah.
And it's really
You
funny.
see Mick in jail at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because if you look at the people that sings Police and Thieves dressed as a cop with a big belly, it's
supposed to be ironic.
funny.
Yeah. But I'm very. That's one of my favorite BAD songs. Especially because we took like 60 seconds of a movie of Sergio Leone's The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. Big samples, because we were the first band to have commercial hits with samples and dialogue. Because now you can't do that shit, you'd get sued. But when we did it, nobody understood what was going on. And our first 4 albums, full of lawsuits.
There's another black music big influence on Clash music. There was hip hop.
Hip hop, yeah, Mick.
It's from Mick, and why? From touring, from hearing, and something.
I think Mick, wherever we went, Mick was the one that was always into embracing the new. So Mick was the first one that was into hip hop. That's why you hear things like Mag 7 and Lightning Strikes on Sandinista, Overpowered by Funk on Combat Rock. And in fact, that's why Big Audio Dynamite sounded like it did, because Mick was totally fat. We all were, with early hip hop. We all loved the hardness, the way it was stripped down. For us, the early hip hop was black American punk rock. Simple as that.
So we can say that before punk rock, the hip hop movement was the only other really groundbreaking movement.
No. What about reggae? Reggae was Jamaica's punk rock. See, if you if you understand what I'm saying about this idea and this attitude, you know why reggae sounds like it does? It's like just skanking a chord, because they couldn't do all the Eric Clapton fancy stuff. So they turned their problem, their musical inability, into an asset. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So that was punk rock. Hip hop, they couldn't play instruments, 2 turntables and a microphone. Punk rock.
Right.
What these things became, that's something else. But the creation of these ideas are all part of that punk rock spirit and that punk rock attitude.
Yes. Returning back in the days, when you DJing at Roxy, you said before you decided to pick up a Super 8 camera.
Yeah.
And you make an absolutely groundbreaking movie. That's the punk rock movie.
No, the punk rock movie. Do you know what he's talking about?
Is an intention.
Here, I tell you. So punk rock explodes, and I'm excited by the energy. I pick up a movie camera, and I start to film all the bands that I like. And then one day, I read in the newspaper a paper called the NME, very famous English music paper. I read in the paper, Donletts is making a punk rock movie. I said, oh, this is a good idea. This is true. And I stick it all together, and this was the punk rock movie, you know. And funny enough, I can't watch, it's too rough, but it definitely captures the beginning of the whole movement. But it was never designed to be a movie. It was just me trying to get my shit together.
And when you start to make movies with the intention of making movies with a project and a different approach.
Oh, when?
When?
Well, after I did punk rock movie, I started making music videos, and I made, like I said, maybe 300, 400 music videos, and that became boring to me because the music changed, and I wasn't interested in making music for dickheads. So I started to make musical documentaries. I've made documentaries for people like Sun Ra, Gil Scott-Heron, George Clinton, Clash's West Way to the World, and many. I made about, I don't know.
Actually, West of the World is a Grammy Award winning.
I've made about 30 music documentaries and a couple of movies. One very famous film in Jamaica called Dancehall Queen, which is Jamaica's most famous film now, but only because A Harder They Come is much older.
Which of one of these you're most proud of it?
What, documentaries?
The movies or documentaries?
Oh, I tell you a documentary I'd like to plug. I tell you why. I did a documentary called Punk Attitude, and it's one of my favorite because what I tried to do in that documentary was, as I explained to you before, is put punk rock in the context of an ongoing dynamic to show people that no, you haven't missed something, you can be part of it too. And that's my favorite documentary because it's trying to bring the thing alive. Or yeah, so Punk Attitude, you can get it, download it or whatever. It's on YouTube.
Mid short question.
Yeah.
No, se quando i gruppi punk hanno cominciato a prendere del reggae e metterlo nei loro dischi, la comunità reggae, i gruppi reggae hanno pensato a un tributo o in qualche modo a una specie di furto.
Okay, when reggae came into the punk music, the reggae community thought they were stealing something?
No.
Or it was a tribute?
No. You heard his question?
Yeah.
I think it's obvious. You know this whole thing, the punky reggae party, which is about the musical interaction between the punk rockers and the reggae guys. It's obvious what punk rock got out of the relationship. They got bass lines, they got dub, and what reggae got out of the relationship was exposure. Because once people realized, okay, these punk rockers are into this reggae thing, other people started to look at reggae, more reggae acts started to come to the UK, and it helped to spread reggae further afield. So that's what reggae got out of the relationship, was exposure. And it needed it because it was getting no radio airplay back then. It was through punk rock interest that reggae exploded once again in the UK.
In the same year, in 1979, there's not only London Calling as a record that tried to move forward stuff and things. There's also the Public Image Limited
and Slits.
And Slits.
Yeah.
And for you, and both were really influenced by dub and reggae.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough to go. The first time I ever went to Jamaica was with Johnny Rotten after the Pistols broke up, and he went there to escape the media madness. And while we were in Jamaica, you know, I realized that he was always quiet, always thinking. And I realized that what he was doing was thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do next? Because the whole musical world was looking at him. And he came back from Jamaica and started Public Image, which is totally informed by the musical experiments of people like Lee Scratch Perry and King Tubby. That's why there's a lot of bass. That's why there's a lot of space. That was an amazing trip. My first time in Jamaica. We were in the studio once with Lee Perry, and Lee Perry did a reggae version of Anarchy in the UK and Holiday in the Sun. Fucking crazy.
And also Josh Strummer and Mick Jones goes to Jamaica in 1977.
Yeah, but I didn't go with them. But they were pretty freaked out because they didn't have any friends. I mean, John went to Jamaica. He took me because it would kind of help him maneuver. Joe and Mick turned up on their own in Kingston wearing punk rock gear, and they didn't stay too long. And that's what inspired the tune "Safe European Home."
Because they realized that there was a reality that was really tough.
No, back then it was very scary. There was political wars going on, shootings in the street, and for them to be walking around in Kingston dressed like that, very brave. Or maybe not, because they ran out of town.
There's a record from this year, 2019. There's Encore by the Specials.
Oh, yeah.
There's a tune that's called Embarrassed by You.
Great tune, man. Great. My favorite tune on the record.
By Limber Golding. basically has the same roots as you. And he says, we never fought for freedom for nasty little brutes like you.
Yep.
Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, he's talking about all these racists and skinheads. I mean, that's what's brilliant about this album is that it still has the vibe. No, but even the early vibe. The reason we love the specials is because they made you think, and you could also dance to their music. And Encore is very much in that spirit. And again, it's tapped in to the political, economic and social climate of the times. It's a very political record. It's also very emotional. I mean, some of those tracks, Terry's addressing his mental problems. Yeah. So it's political.
A Man Called Depression.
Yes, it's political and emotional at the same time. And somehow you can dance to it. And it's a great combination. Music for your mind and your feet. It's possible.
Okay.
Look, the people are fed up. They're talking. Yes, enough talking. No? Right, go on. Go.
Someone have a question? I have finished then. Someone have a question?
Anybody got any questions?
Anybody has a question?
Oh, fuck, what did I ask?
They were penniless. How is it possible?
How? The question is, how comes the Clash was so successful and were kind of broke? Because they did things like Sandinista. I mean, London Calling, 2 LPs for the price of 1. The only reason they could do that is because the record company took it out of their money. Then they do Sandinista, 3 LPs for the price of 1. That's why they were broke.
Other questions?
It's true that Joe Strummer stole your records. It's true that Joe Strummer stole your records.
He stole my records and he stole my fucking girlfriend. It's true. We didn't speak for 6 months. Yeah, no. A girl called Jeanette. Yeah. In fact, this was at the time of the first Rock Against Racism. A very important gig, Rock Against Racism. But Joe Strummer had stolen my girlfriend, and I was at home. I didn't go to Rock Against Racism. Any more? No? It's good.
I have a question. Back in the days, you have a huge collection of Beatles memorabilia and stuff, and someday you decide to leave it. Tell me about it. Tell me something about your Beatles, your Beatlemania.
I'm as old as rock and roll. I was born in 1956, so I grew up with the Stones, the Kinks, the Who, the Beatles. I was Beatles crazy, and by the mid-70s, I had one of the largest collections of Beatles memorabilia in the whole of the UK. I was like obsessed. One day I was doing an interview in my shop, Acme Attractions, I think it's 1976, and funnily enough, the interview was with an Italian magazine, L'Uomo Vogue, and they were asking me about my Beatles collection. And in the middle of the interview, I had a revelation, because punk rock was happening around me. And I said, collecting is fucking stupid. And the next day, I got rid of everything except for the music, and I got a big American car from another person I knew. Got rid of all my Beatles stuff except for the music, and got a big American car. 2 weeks later, I had to get rid of the big American car because the police kept stopping me because they didn't understand how a little black Rasta kid was driving a big American car. So 2 weeks later, I got rid of it. But I never regretted getting rid of all the kind of the nonsense, the wallpaper and fucking cups and plates. The only thing that was ever important was the music. Everything else is capitalism.
Yeah. Minute left. Do you have some advice to new artists and new record that you like right now?
Advice? Man, listen, the landscape...
We are in a record store.
Yeah, but
if you go to a record store, man, can you tell me a new artist that you like?
No, if somebody asked me that, I would tell them to listen to my radio show.
BBC 6.
Culture Clash Radio. But you know, advice, I'm not good at advice because the landscape has changed so much now. I mean, for me, I still live by my 3 punk rock rules, which is turning your problems into an asset, use what you got to get what you need, and a good idea attempted is better than a bad idea perfected. And this gets me through life.
And thank you very much.
Grazie.